And then he felt like, oh my God, like this plant hears my mind. It's psychic. It knows my intentions. He knew that this was a sentient being.
Now, tell me about how plants are psychic, because I came across this study a long time back too, and I thought it was fascinating, but I want you to share it with us because it just, again, it's part of this that I think is really important. One of my goals with the podcast is to kind of expand people's concepts of what they think they know, right? It's like keep expanding your box and just be open to different experiences, because then we allow them in if we do. And I thought this was a really fascinating part of it too.
Yeah, okay, so it started out with Cleve Baxter. He is a polygraph specialist in the CIA. So he is like, at his time, was like the #1 guy in teaching other CIA agents on how to use this lie detector machine. And I mean, you could just imagine what kind of guy is like sitting in his office and one day he's like, I wonder what would happen if I connected my lie detector machine to a plant that I have in my office. You know, like,
yeah,
that took a little bit of like genuine curiosity, right? So he hooked up his polygraph to the plant, and he did a series of experiments, and the guy just like did so many interesting things with plants after that point. And I'll just share two. One is he thought, well, what would happen if and the plant's connected, if I like struck a match and started lighting the plant on fire. In that very moment that he had the thought about doing it, he didn't even do it. He just had a thought about doing it. The plant started to freak out on the machine. The energetic, information, skin galvanic response. You could go on and on about this actual science about how it actually works, but the plant essentially started freaking out. And then he felt like, oh my God, like this plant hears my mind. It's psychic. It knows my intentions. I feel terrible. And he couldn't even do it. He couldn't bring himself to do the experiment because he knew that this was a sentient being. The other really cool experiment that he did, well, there's so many, but the one that I thought was fascinating was that ultimately his conclusion was that plants can identify the murderer in the room. So he did this experiment where there were several plants in a room, and he would have people walk through, and one of the people that was walking through the room would, crumple up and destroy one of the plants. And later, you can imagine, it's like you see in the movies, you line them all up and you got to choose which one. On the actual polygraph machine, the plants, when that person who came in who was destructive and with malintent walked in the room, they started to freak out on the polygraph machine and effectively pointed the finger at who it was that was destructive. And then one more I'll share is, it actually, speaking of non-local, one of his colleagues who was in the same office traveled a bunch of miles to another state, and it was his birthday party. And so what Cleve did is he had these polygraphs attached to the plants like nonstop, 24/7, right? And it was his colleague's birthday, and somebody had done a surprise birthday party. So the moment that his colleague, miles away, hits this, somebody's house, and they all jump out and yell, surprise! And he feels that, positive stress response in his own nervous system. His colleague's plant in his office also started to register a stress on the machine. So then that tells us that the plants that we're in constant communication with and have a relationship with feel us at all times, no matter where we are and how far away we are. It's like mind-blowing, right?
Mm-hmm. It's like there's so much that goes on that, I really feel like we know this infinitesimal amount. And then most of the time, even when we think we totally know what it is, we realize that it's actually much more than what we thought it was. And then we have to sort of expand more too.